Integra Resources is an advanced stage exploration company and a developer. So for the last almost 5 years now, we've been advancing a past producing mining operation that was owned previously by Kinross in southwestern Idaho called DeLamar. And when we purchased the project about 5 years ago from Kinross, we had the view, because this was one of those unique projects that was shut down during a low gold and silver price environment, that there was a very large resource base that was left behind. If you roll the clock forward to today, we have close to 5 million ounces of gold equivalent in the ground. So a lot of gold and silver in this part of southwestern Idaho. And because it's a past producing asset, it was in production up until the year 2000, 2001. We believe from a permitting perspective, it's essentially, we view things as a bit of a restart from where Kinross left off in the end of the day. We've done a PFS study very recently, which showed really strong economics. And right now we're focusing on the aspects of the project that have to do with low cost production, specifically heap leaching of these gold and silver ores that we have defined over the last few years. So this is pretty new to our shareholders, so it's a good opportunity to talk about it, obviously. So we put out the PFS earlier this year. Our mission with that PFS was, how can we take a really solid economic project and make it even better? And the quickest and easiest way for us to do that was to look at where we can add incremental ounces, gold and silver, that are potentially heap leachable. And look no further in our case than to these low-grade stockpiles that Kinross left behind from their mining and milling back in the day. So roughly speaking, we think that there's about 60 million tons of that material that's still remnant sitting there on surface, and with an approximate grade range of 0.4 to 0.8 grams per ton gold equivalent. So that's right in the sweet spot of our grade with respect to heap leaching. We know that this material is oxidized, so it'll probably leach very well, and it's been sitting there for the better part of 20-30 years, so it's had time to further oxidize. So we think that adding at least some of this material to future mine plans will add mine life and enhance what are already some pretty solid economics on the project. So that's what the 11,000 meters of drilling will do, is essentially bring those that low-hanging fruit aspect of the stockpile material into a mine plan and future production scenarios, hopefully. In addition to all this exploration work that's going to add ounces to the future mine plans, we're also in the thick of permitting. We're one of the few projects in the western U.S. that isn't owned by a current gold producer that's targeting sort of permitting of a pretty substantial heap leach operation in the western U.S. So we have the permitting that's on the way, and we believe we're about 3 years away from a record decision based on the permitting iterations that we have to do. So that kind of puts us in sort of project construction mode 3 years from now. Figure for another additional year to kind of get into sort of cash flow and commercial production. So that kind of gives you a sense of first cash flows sort of 3 to 4 years out. This is the question of the day, isn't it? I mean, we're in a sense, everybody in the mining space is paying for the sins of the past, and there were some substantial sins made. And so our philosophy is engage early with your key stakeholders. That's a primary one, and that's one that we've been doing a lot of work on in the last 4 years. Active engagement with the NGOs, with the local stakeholders. In our case, the ranching community, which would be our largest stakeholder in the area. Just keeping them up to speed on what your future plans are, being completely transparent in what those plans are and how they'll be involved. I think that's probably the top of the list. And then the other element that we focused a lot on in this latest study was what means of mining and processing and remediation can we employ on the project that will not only be a benefit to the environment, but will actually make money for the project. Typically people think of introducing environmentally friendly means to a project is a cost. What we found in our study is that there's an actual benefit. And for example, we've in our PFS study that we put out, we put in a system of railed conveyance from the 2 open pits to the heap leach. And so that reduces our carbon footprint substantially, because we're not going to need trucks to do that. It's going to be an electric rail conveyor system, it's called. It'll actually generate electricity, so we'll be generating electricity for the project. In addition, we're looking at LNG as a source of power, and obviously that reduces our carbon footprint as opposed to the other means that we were contemplating previously. So there's all these things that project leaders, executives can do to make projects not only more economic, but at the same time more environmentally sustainable. First and still probably top 5 would be, it was a little known Swedish listed company, resource explorer, advanced stage project developer, a lot like actually Integra is in the end of the day. And it was a project in northern Finland that we were trying to develop during what is certainly in my career the low point of the low of gold and silver prices. I think gold was trading at $260 an ounce, 280. This would have been the early 2000s, and the company's sort of senior management at the time were saying, look, we have to continue investing in this project despite what the market conditions are, because we need to be ready with this project. Either we develop it ourselves or somebody comes along and buys us out and goes on to develop it. So I invested a little bit of my own money into it in the beginning, and that was a 10x return for me back in the day. That was my first kind of win, I guess. And but it more importantly, it taught me a pretty key lesson, which is, try and predict when the good times are going to be, and prepare yourself for when those times come. Because in that case, we were within the space of about a year and a half, we were taken over by Agnico Eagle, and that's now a very large mining operation that they own and operate successfully. It's well over 5 million ounces, produces a lot of gold. And so preparing oneself as a company leader for when times do turn, I think was a key lesson that I learned there. Yeah, I think it's more, again, relating to the times that we're in right now. Obviously, it's pretty rough market conditions out there. We're seeing it amongst all of our peers. In addition to ourselves, we're all project developers who are suffering the slings and arrows of inflation, the inflationary period that we're in. I guess my message to everybody else, and including my own team, is we have to stay the course with this, because we have something that's very rare, which is an economic asset in a first world jurisdiction that's got tremendous potential, that's potentially tremendously economic, and you can't give up. You have to keep your foot on the gas even during these tough times. Do what you can to advance the project.